Hey guys, insight number 2, we're in Ezekiel. We're going to go to chapter 3 and look at more of what his calling is now described as from the Lord. I gave a brief synopsis of who Ezekiel is, a brief, and I mean like 10 minutes worth, but it's good stuff. Well, if you don't want to know, don't have to watch it, but it kind of might help you understand where Ezekiel's coming from, right? So we're going to look at 17 and 27. This is describing his actual call a bit more and what the Lord needs him to go and do. So chapter 3, 17 and verse 27 reads, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. So he's saying, like, look, I'm making you a prophet. It's the watchman in the tower to warn these people because they haven't listened before, as we've been studying. They have not listened. So let's give it another try now that they're in captivity and it's getting, bad and Jerusalem's about to be destroyed completely. Maybe they'll start listening this time. And then in 27 he points out, now this is where the message comes in for all of us. But when I speak with thee, I will open thy mouth, and thou shalt say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God. He that heareth, let him hear, and he that forbeareth, let him forbear, for they are a rebellious house. So in other words, saying that hearing requires a response. So, how do you think hearing requires a response? Because you can talk to someone and they can be like, yeah, I heard you. But does it sink in, and do they actually go and do the thing that you ask them to do? We all know the scenario of asking our spouses, can you take out the rubbish? And they're like, yes, I can. And what you mean to say is, will you take it out in the next 5 minutes? And that's a whole different question for a lot of people. And it's that communication that doesn't always get through. So that actually actively hearing and actively listening to someone will require a response from your behalf. Whether that's an answer that lets them know you've heard them, or whether that's an action that they're asking you to do. But for most of these people that are in this position, they have been preached to and talked to and have just not listened. They've heard them talking, but they haven't absorbed those words. And their responses indicate that they haven't actually heard what's being said. They sort of know that it was just some guy preaching at them that was claiming to be a prophet. Like, they just don't quite get it. So I think you'll probably see that a lot in little kids where they're still learning how to do this. You might have a family member that's particularly problematic with this, but it's something that we all are aware of. So Ezekiel's call specifically places him as a watchman to speak the Lord's words and give the people warnings. In verse 27, the Lord points out that it is Ezekiel, and indeed our calling, to speak and teach the people. Whether they choose to listen is up to them. So if they're not listening to you, it doesn't matter. Don't get angry. Just keep patiently doing what the Lord would ask you to do and ask you to speak. And if they listen, great. And if they don't, it's on them. You've done your calling. Right? That's important because a lot of us can feel that, we haven't done enough because people haven't listened. It's like, well, maybe you can practice on your delivery and maybe you could use different words, and there's always ways to improve like that. But some people are just not going to listen. And that's actually, keep trying, but it's like you're not going to take the blame for it if you're doing your best effort and you're following what Christ wants you to do. It's just one of those situations. It's not that they're going to be blamed for it either, because you know that it takes that one person to come in after you've been saying, like I have this with my husband all the time, how I will tell him. Someone else will come in and say it once, and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, what the heck? I've been telling you this for 2 years. He's like, oh, well, they just said it in a way that I understood better. And it's like, well, the point is you're doing it. That's great. So sometimes it just takes the different approach, and that can be you change the ministering people to that family. That could be that you yourself have a humbling and go in with a different approach of let's just visit rather than let's take a message. There's a lot of different ways, but if you're led by the Spirit, you'll be fine. True listening and hearing requires action. As I said, whether it's an actual go and do response or a actual reply to know that they have been heard. Forbear here means lacking an idol. So when it talks about them, he that forbeareth, let him forbear. So him that wants to be lacking an idol, let him be lacking an idol. That's okay. Just leave them till they're ready to hear. If you truly hear, then you are motivated to act. Again, whether it's a verbal response to whatever they're talking about so that they know you've heard, or whether it's an actual physical action. So, Elder Anderson said of this, what is our responsibility as peaceful disciples of Jesus Christ? Let us live God's commandments, teach them to our children, and share them with others who are willing to listen. And that's kind of the key. We can share them with people who are not willing to listen, and as, Elder Holland said in his last conference talk, he was sharing this message, and his friend looked at his watch and said, oh yeah, I've got to be somewhere, because he wasn't in the place ready to hear it yet. That doesn't mean we give up. Elder Holland didn't. Some 20 years later, he finished his message. That person could still be looking at their watch and looking at the door. But for a lot of us, it was really good to hear. So don't give up. Most importantly, start with your children and your family. For me, it's my nieces and nephews and step-grandchildren, and whoever wants to listen. I've got young cousins that listen to me do this. And great, like if I can uplift them and strengthen their day and teach them even just one little thing that they are ready to hear, fantastic. So keep that in mind. Hearing requires a response, but if people don't want to listen, that's okay. Leave them be. If they're going to be lacking and idle and they're not ready, it's not that they're lazy, they're just not ready. And that's okay. Leave that as it is and be their friend, continue to be their friend. Maybe wait for them to bring up the answer, and bring up the point they want an answer to. And then you can actively listen, be guided by the Spirit, and preach the gospel in a way that they are now ready to hear. I'm sure you've had experiences with this. Most people would have. But that's insight number 2. So enjoy that. Hang around for insight number 3. We're going to talk about what kind of shepherd you are. More on the same kind of subject. There you go. I'll see you there.